if you're a policymaker or a tech strategist sitting in Beijing, and you're seeing this export control driven strategy, you're seeing the CHIPS Act and the amount of money that's now being given to private sector companies in the US, which is unlike before. You're seeing the emphasis on R&D and great amounts of money being put into R&D as part of the CHIPS Act. As a Chinese policymaker, what do you do? From China, that might impact the rest of the world and the semiconductor industry outside of China, is its dominance on the rare earth element side. Do you think that could be an effective counter strike against the US export control strategy on the chip technology side?
Well, we've seen China make some threats in that sphere over the past couple of months, both in terms of rare earth elements and also in terms of gallium and germanium, which are two other materials needed in chip making. The challenge that China faces is that many of the uses of both rare earths and gallium and germanium are in chips or electronics that are produced abroad and then sent back to China for assembly. There are lots of jobs in China that depend on this trade back and forth. And then Chinese consumers are also large users of many of the communications devices, for example, that require gallium and germanium. And there's no way that China can simply impose costs on the West by cutting off gallium and germanium exports, for example, without also imposing costs on China. So it's not a very targeted retaliatory tool. It would hurt everyone, China included. And I think that's why China has threatened retaliation, but has not actually retaliated via these types of minerals thus far.
But one could argue that there would be similar costs that the US would need to incur once the US has put all of these export controls in place as well, right? Because China, of course, has been a large exporter of many of these electronic goods, etc., at cheaper costs that might otherwise get manufactured in other parts of the world.
I think that dynamic exists, but the magnitudes are different. So if you look, for example, at the effort to shift assembly of devices outside of China towards Vietnam, towards India, towards Thailand, it's probably true that costs are slightly higher than in China. But actually, Chinese wages have been rising rapidly. And in many cases, Vietnam or Thailand are very efficient places to assemble electronics as well. And so the cost differential doesn't seem to be that substantial. Companies are willing to pay it or are able to pass it on to consumers. It hasn't been that dramatic. So yes, there are costs involved in the Western effort, but they're smaller in magnitude, I think, more dispersed and therefore more palatable for political leaders than the cost that China would face for its retaliatory.